Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. Good stuff today. Actually, really interesting stuff to talk about. Starting to creep towards OTAs and obviously training camp, which is really exciting. So we got some really interesting news. Obviously, the Dolphins are struggling to find what are they going to do at defensive back. So we're going to talk about that, which is got some really interesting updates on that. And I think that's where we'll probably start. I mean, obviously, the leaked new rival jerseys, I guess is what they're calling them, with like the Miami Vice look, kind of like what the Heat did. Looks really cool. I just wanted to say that. If that is actually what they're going to look like, super cool. But anyway, let's get into the news you need to know about. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins are interested in cornerback Asante Samuel Jr., Rasul Douglas, and James Bradbury. The Dolphins had made contact with Asante Samuel Jr., according to Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. Samuel is recovering from neck surgery, but the Dolphins are among the teams which will wait and watch his situation. So he's also visited the Saints, Cardinals, and Dolphins seem to be the most interested parties. There was a recent report that I've been keeping tabs on this because I really want this to happen, but he's only 25 years old. I just wanted to throw that in there as well, which fixes a lot of issues that we've talked about in the past, but because of his age, he's also showed interest with the Packers. Apparently have shown a lot of interest in him with the Jair Alexander situation, kind of in the same, very similar situation that the Dolphins are in. That could be an interesting pivot point for Miami if they really wanted. We talked about, okay, they get rid of Jalen Ramsey. Is there a trade the Dolphins could make? That would be an interesting one. And what's even more interesting about Green Bay is that they are very conservative when it comes to trades. So I actually think the Dolphins could do something with maybe a third-round pick, maybe a second-round pick. I mean, the Dolphins to get a young, really good, one of the best players at his position, I would give up a second-round pick for Jair Alexander. He has had weird off-the-field issues, which is not something I think the Dolphins want to deal with again. They just went through the Jalen Ramsey thing. Jair does have, I wouldn't even say it's not even an expensive contract anymore when you talk about the cornerback market. So that could be something the Dolphins, at least, it's been rumored, but I feel like that's mostly fan stuff. I don't think there's been any concrete stuff linking the Dolphins and Packers when it comes to a Jair Alexander trade. But it's definitely something to think about. It's something the Dolphins could do, especially if they're able to, which is the biggest hurdle right now in the Jalen Ramsey thing, is who's going to take on this contract. It's a really bad contract, and obviously the Dolphins don't want to eat that dead cap money, so that's something that's obviously really getting in the way of a trade. But anyways, going back to Asante Samuel Jr., obviously, he's had a lot of injuries through his career, especially recently with the neck. I think I can't remember what he had a recent injury as well. I think it was I can't remember. But, he's a smaller player, but, fits the scheme. You're going to be in a lot of cover two. You got to have the athleticism to break on the ball, really read and react what's in front of you. And you got to have that burst. He's been in the league long enough where he's not a young player who's learning on the fly, which is also a huge W. Fits the scheme. We talked about this before, but the Dolphins really don't have any building blocks in their secondary right now. There's no real blue chip players there that have a really high ceiling that we're confident in. Obviously, there's young players in the secondary, but we just don't. Who knows what Cam Smith is. Cam Smith is basically an enigma at this point. We have no idea what Cam Smith is. We do know that Cam Smith wasn't good enough to get on the field last year, which I think is a huge mark against him, going through two different defensive coordinators, and neither one of them thought that he could help them when they were dealing with injuries. So that's a problem. So Yeah. But they do have a lot of young players in their secondary, but none of them are proven, and we have no idea really what they could be. Asante Samuel has had really good moments in the NFL as a professional player. He's looked really good. He's very good. He's a playmaker. He's done it in big games. These are all things the Dolphins need in the secondary, and he has a high ceiling. If he can stay healthy, he can put together a season that he can make a Pro Bowl easily. So to get a player like that this late in free agency at a very premium position is very difficult to do, and I hope that they can get him and sign him because that would be the best case scenario for the Dolphins. Yeah, that would be a really clutch move. So let's go to Rasul Douglas. Samuel is one of 2 corners who land among PFR's top 50 free agents who remain unsigned. Rasul Douglas joins him, and the Dolphins had placed themselves in the market for him as well. Miami met with Douglas, extending an offer. No deal emerged, and Douglas had then visited the Seahawks. The Dolphins, however, remain in touch with Douglas, report to Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. Shout out Barry Jackson. He seems like the only human being who covers the Dolphins that actually supplies news and does their job. But I don't think we've read an article, like any news, like quotes or snippets or any blurbs from anybody else other than Barry Jackson. But anyway, Rasul Douglas is I would say he's not. The thing about Rasul Douglas, he's not athletically gifted. He's a very smart player. He has succeeded the most in zone coverage. That is something that I would say most of the time. I mean, we ran too high coverage and cover 2 a lot last year. We were out of everybody in the NFL, we ran it one of the most, if not, I think we were top 3. So it's not our scheme does not put a lot of pressure on you from an athletic standpoint. So an older corner can come in and have success in this system. If this was like Brian Flores, where it's you're on an island, that's not a good fit for Rasul Douglas. So the scheme fit is there, which is good. And I think there are positives with him. He does have, this is a very short-term marriage. He's an average corner, and honestly, it could go one of 2 ways. We really don't want this to be another Jordan Poyer situation where it's can we squeeze another good veteran season out of this player? With Jordan Poyer, it was awful. It was terrible. And we couldn't. So the hope with Rasul Douglas would be okay, maybe we get one, I'm talking, it just has to be a serviceable season from him. And that would be a huge positive. So scheme fit, plug and play. The only thing is this the downhill year for him? Because he played on a defense last year that was not good in the secondary at all, and got fried in a lot of games. So I would say the positive is that I feel and I've said this multiple times, but I really like our front 7. I think it's very talented. So again, if you're a corner coming into this defense, you're coming in with a defensive coordinator who great culture, really good game by game planner, and you're not gonna have to cover for that long if people can stay healthy. And the good thing about that is the Dolphins only need 2, most teams only have 2 good pass rushers. The Dolphins have 3 great pass rushers. So that's a good thing. They have depth there. They also have some young players that we're still okay. Muhammad Kamara, Quentin Bell, who's a younger player. Some of those guys that showed good stuff last year for us. So I think they have a lot of depth there. If one of our starters were to go down, I feel Chop and whoever, whether it's Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, it's still a very powerful duo. So again, corners aren't coming in here and expected to cover all day long. They do have the benefit of a very good defensive line. What else are we talking about? Oh yeah, James Bradberry. I don't even want to talk about James Bradberry, but I guess it's relevant. James Bradberry also came up as a potential solution earlier this offseason, with Jackson indicating that the Dolphins engage in dialogue with the free agent. Bradberry will be unlikely to convince a team to spend much, as he's north of 30 and coming off a missed season. James Bradberry's gone. The last season he played, he was awful. just he's not the answer. I would rather, and if even if they sucked, I would rather have our young corners play the entire year than have an old guy who has already proven that he's not as good as he used to be. Far from it. So I would not like that. I don't even think, honestly, like, obviously Marshall from Florida, who we drafted, who played a lot of man coverage. I don't know. I just listen to Storm Duck, who's coming in to year 2 or year 3. I think it's year 2. So obviously Cam Smith. I would rather see those guys play than. I mean, they still have Cater Kogu, who's a good. He's not a good outside corner, but he's a good slot corner. So, what are we talking about next? Okay, I think that's it for like the major stuff. Or not the major stuff. By the way, this is just a fun nugget. They did a list of who was the most lucrative contract for a middle linebacker for each franchise, and the Dolphins. I don't know why I thought it was going to be Zach Thomas, but it was Jerome Baker, because Zach Thomas was probably like super low on that list because we paid like Kevin Burnett, Carlos Dansby, Darnell Ellerby. If you guys remember those players, like we paid them a lot of money. What? There was something else here. I guess that's really the Jalen Ramsey thing is. I guess we should talk about that for a second. The Jalen Ramsey thing is out of control. So this is, I guess, an update on the situation. Jalen Ramsey has already been reported. Essentially, Ramsey is looking to depart from South Beach. A potential return to the Rams has gained traction, but the Dolphins' unwillingness to retain some of Ramsey's salary has stalled things at the moment. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler claimed to have spoken to someone in Dallas who suggested that they might not be done adding players through trades this offseason. Okay. I mean, I don't even know why would the Cowboys want him? If they're willing to take that salary, dude, which they're the most frugal, one of the more frugal organizations in the NFL when it comes to that. So there's no way they would do that. I don't know. That's weird. I don't know why Dallas would even want him. They have. You want to give us Deron Blaine for somebody? That's cool. But yeah, I don't. They have so many. They just drafted Siobhan from East Carolina or whatever the heck he played college, who's a very good young corner. I don't know why they would want another corner. But yeah, nobody knows. Nobody knows what's gonna happen. All we know is that he's leaving. It's just like, in what way is he gonna leave? Is he gonna be traded? Worst case is he's getting cut. That's worst case scenario, which I hope doesn't happen. I would dude, Chris. That has to be like the last resort, because I would rather have him play unhappy on this team than have to eat the dead cat money. Or at least try to reconcile. But it doesn't really seem like that's gonna happen. So yeah, that's it for the news. Oddly enough, I thought we had actually more to talk about, but. This next news story, actually, we have one last thing. This is very interesting. By the way, this is, I thought Darrell Bevell left. I could have sworn he left. I don't know why. I thought he went to Seattle for some reason. Or back to Seattle. But no, Darrell Bevell's still here. And then I was like, okay, we still have Darrell Bevell. And I started to think to myself, man, this coaching staff is really good. I really like this coaching staff. But anyway, Darrell Bevell's a phenomenal coach. Anyway, this article, Darrell Bevell takes on challenge of reviving Zach Wilson's career with the Miami Dolphins. And I clicked this article, but there was an interesting quote here where Darrell Bevell basically, now if you guys have watched the interview, where is the quote? Sorry, I don't know where the quote is. It's a very long article. Maybe this was the wrong article. It might have been, actually. Basically, if you want to watch, or just watch the interview, I guess. But he was gushing about Zach Wilson. He was talking about how great his arm is and how their expectations were kind of low for him, which is interesting. And that he's apparently, I mean, the way he put it was pleasantly surprised about Zach Wilson and how he's looked. I mean, again, this is OTAs, dude, so like just take this with a grain of salt. But I mean, this is something about Zach Wilson that we all know. Very giftedly, from a gifted standpoint, as gifted as it gets when it comes to a quarterback. He just needs to learn to play the position better and be more consistent. And again, I guess I had the wrong article, but yeah, just a lot of high praises. And so far, like, Darrell Bevell was gushing about Zach Wilson. And I really strongly encourage anybody to go read one of those articles or watch the video, because I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting. I think he's definitely the best backup quarterback we've had in a very long time. Probably, I guess, technically since Fitzpatrick. I guess you could argue that when Tua was here, or flip it around, I guess. That was like the best quarterback room we've had in recent memory. But Zach Wilson is really talented, and it doesn't surprise me that these are some of the articles we're reading. Preseason is going to be one of the most fun Dolphins preseasons, I think. I think there's a lot of players that are really good. There's some very good depth on this team in certain positions, and especially receiver. I'm really excited to see Westbrook-Ikine, Taj Washington, Malik Washington in year 2. I think that's really interesting. Julian Hill, who I've always really liked as a tight end, even though it's like the amount of penalties. I think I don't know. There's something about Julian Hill where I think he can actually have a pretty good career in the NFL, so I'm excited to see if he's gotten better. So there's a lot of young players on the Ollie Gordon. I know a lot of people are excited about. Obviously, Jonah, who we drafted, Kenneth Grant, but the quarter, and Zach Wilson especially. Like, I'm excited to see what he can do with some of those receivers that are younger and that are developing, like a Taj Washington or a Westbrook-Ikine. I don't know how much he's going to get playing time with those guys, but that should be fun. So, and Ollie Gordon as well. But yeah, Zach Wilson, I know a lot of people hate him. I really like him. He was actually like kind of like the dream scenario for me when it came like who's going to be our backup quarterback this year. I really liked the idea of Zach Wilson. I think he's just a lot better than some of the other guys that they could have gotten. And he has a high ceiling. Like, let's just, God forbid, and I hope this doesn't happen, if Tua got hurt, he comes in and plays really well. And he has a lot of things going for him, a really talented team on offense. His coach is awesome when it comes to game planning for games and scheming. Like, there's potential where, hey, this guy plays great. You could trade him the next season if you wanted to, because he's so young and so talented. So, I don't know, real interesting, stuff about Zach. And Darrell Bevell, who's coached had so many, like, career seasons with quarterbacks. So, it's definitely something to keep your eye on if you're a Dolphins fan. And I think the Dolphins are in good hands with Zach Wilson. He's so much better than Mike White and Skylar Thompson, dude. It's not even close. Anyway, what else did I want to say? That's it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Also, one thing, like, just as a Dolphins fan that I thought was interesting, pre-Mike McDaniel, I was thinking to myself, I would have killed for us to have an offense that we did have the first 2 Mike McDaniel seasons. And it was just funny to me thinking about how weird Dolphins fans are. It just kind of like turned. Even in the moment of those seasons, I remember people being like, about Mike McDaniel. And he had the number 1 offense. And then the year before that, his first year, he had a top 5 total offense. And with not, the best talent in the world when it comes to, like, the offensive line, in terms of especially the interior. And I don't know, something about that. I was like, Dolphin fans are weird. And I'm excited about this team and this offense. I really am. And I'm excited about the defensive line with Anthony Weaver. I think that's, and I feel like I say this every episode, but it's true. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one.